Yo, how's it going everybody? You got Sketch here and welcome back to the channel. On today's episode we're checking out a remake of an established classic that takes us back to the Curian Mansion with an all new coat of paint for one of Sega's best known light gun franchises. I remember being hyped for this when it was announced in 2021 but then got delayed another year, but it did eventually release. Today we're looking at the House of the Dead remake, developed by Megapixel Studios and published by Forever Entertainment in conjunction with Microids. Listen to the Nintendo Switch, Xbox Series and 1, PS4 and 5, and the PC in 2022. Sega's AM1 developed classic gets a new life breathed into it, or so we hope. But before we bang on too much more, let's check out the story. Set in the year 1998, you play as either AMS agents Thomas Rogan or G as you blast your way through the legions of bioengineered monsters inside the Curian Mansion. As you explore the grounds, more and more abominations cross your path until you meet the mad scientist himself and battle his most vile creations. Can you rescue all your friends and make it out alive? Gameplay wise, you've got a 3D on-rails light gun game where you'll shoot your way through 4 levels as you navigate the Curian Mansion. Whereas the original had you with just a pistol as your primary weapon, this time around you have an unlockable arsenal. In the vein of the original, you'll blast through the game's 4-stage run and take out as many zombies and creatures as you can, while also trying to save as many scientists as possible. Secrets like the hidden room and various bonus points are still strewn about each stage, where a keen eye and quick reflexes will have you stacking up those bonus points when you see them. The other key to high scoring is accuracy, which will increase your overall agent rating, and the less shots you take will have you climb in the ranks. As you move through each area, depending on your reaction time and split decision making, the game will lead you down a few possible paths along the Curian Mansion. There's also the speedrun strategy of saving none of the scientists to move through the game a little bit quicker, but this will actually take away the access to the special weapons later on. The special weapons are sick too, letting you run the game like the later entries with shotguns, submachine guns, or crossbows, but it's just the original pistol unless you rescue every friendly on the first 3 stages, and that's easier said than done. You can use multiple control options for this entry depending on console. The Switch lets you use the Joy-Cons or the Pro Controller, and you can hold the controller like it's arcade peripheral by holding the controller horizontally. While this does sound great on paper, using the gyro controls does feel a bit strange, but it can carry you through the game if you want to do it that way. Using the analog sticks is an okay option, but it does change the reload to hitting the left trigger. The difficulty of this back in the day seemed impossible, and playing this remake and the original these days, it isn't bad as long as you understand how to optimize your play. Enemies come in without much variation or random behaviors from the original, so once you can learn enemy placement and land headshots, you'll be smoking zombies expeditiously. The branching paths will switch up the scenarios, but this is also one of those games that once familiar, you'll find yourself clearing it at least a couple different times to see how everything works out. Enemies leading up to boss characters will throw sturdier ops at you that have ranged and heavy weapons, which can clap you up quick if you aren't careful. Bosses are gnarly here, and the chariot is the first one you'll battle. What you need to do is hit the weak points that are marked in red on the info cards, avoid the projectiles if they got them, and whenever possible, stun lock boss characters. As you progress, the hangman and hermit battles will legit shower you with projectiles, but it prepares you for the final fight with the magician. Before you get to the last boss, you will have to fight the chariot and the hangman again. Graphics wise, the original was developed by Sega's AM1 team, using the Sega Model 2 hardware. The remake is using the Unity engine, which completely overhauls the original polygon graphics. The remake's graphics don't look half bad here, but the original does have its chunky charm. Megapixel were considering including a nostalgia mode that's more in the vein of the original, but it was abandoned during development. What's more interesting is that the remake exists due to the original source code being lost, like many other games of the era. While Sega did not assist in the development of the remake, they did however drop some conditions to Megapixel for them to follow, being to add difficulty levels, make no changes to the story, and take notes from the most recent arcade House of the Dead cabinet, Scarlet Dawn. With all that in mind, this explains why you don't see any radical changes to the enemy designs or new creations, placements, or the environments besides them being redrawn in the Unity engine. Some things that are new, however, are the extra weapons, the sprites and their new look, while everything else visually remains true to the original. All the secrets from the original are here, along with the triggers to activate them, and the remake also adds a combo counter and bonus point graphics. Where this differs, however, is with its performance. Compared with the original House of the Dead, despite the shiny, revised, recreated visuals, the performance does have several spots where it chugs and drops frame rate. There are also points where the game will stutter during gameplay on the Switch version in particular. And while this may not be a deal breaker for some, if you can look past the occasional choppiness, it actually looks pretty decent. Sprites can be dismembered with grisly new visuals and then dissolve into the ground, sort of like the blob enemies from Silent Hill 3. Character models also have been updated but not radically changed from the original, and boss characters are redrawn, and these have some subtle differences from their originals, but maintain all the signatures from the 1996 coin-op. Environments are also redrawn for the remake, while everything remains intact from the original. If you're familiar with the paths and where they branch, then this will be no surprise for series veterans. The levels look cool in the Unity engine, but once again the performance and sometimes long load times can take you out of the action. Arenas for the boss encounters do get a nice makeover, with the hermit lair being covered in spiderwebs, and the laboratories having some nice details as you smoke the zombie threat. There are several endings you can achieve through gaining a certain score, and saving some, all, or none of the scientists. For the most part, good prevails, but there are a couple twist endings in there too. The iconic tracking shot through the Kyrian mansion as an ending has been changed for the remake, however, mostly replaced by static images with its credit crawl, instead leading to one of several possible outcomes at the end. This does provide incentive to play through the game at least a few times and venture down those unfamiliar paths. That's if you can hang with those performance issues mentioned earlier. Sound-wise, this does have some substantial differences compared with the original. The original soundtrack had licensing issues that were not able to be resolved during the production, resulting in the soundtrack composed by Tetsuya Kawauchi not being heard in the remake. A new soundtrack would be composed by Sebastian Poncelet, which does hit some of the same notes as the original. The wailing guitars accompany familiar backbeats as you move through the Kyrian estate, which is a bit different from its original score, but you can hear the influence. It's interesting that at times, some of the tracks sound like they should be theme songs from 70s and 80s television. There's a solo on Chapter 2 that sounds like the theme song from Chips, and Chapter 3 has an almost Kerncraft 4000 B-side vibe with its Hoover synths, but the organ-laden soundtracks from the original are all gone here. Voice lines were re-recorded with a new cast of voice actors, arranged by Natalie Roars. While the script is the same for the most part, the intention was to make the line's delivery slightly less campy, which in some ways they do succeed. What's weird is that some of the voice lines do have a bit of a sync delay at points, where characters look like they're speaking, but they aren't actually saying anything until several frames into their speech animation. Overall, the audio, despite its differences, isn't bad with its new compositions, but it may leave some series vets wanting the option to switch between new and old soundtracks and bytes, which you just can't do on the Switch version, unfortunately. But there is a PC patch available to restore the original soundtrack and voice work. House of the Dead Remake is something I really wanted to like more, or at least as much as the original. Granted, I understand that aside from a few home ports for the Saturn and PC, the source code just isn't available to use or port in the current day. While it's a good thing Sega trusts third-party companies with their IPs, it would be better if they took the reins a bit more as far as quality assurance. While this was announced in 2021, it was delayed until 2022, and it makes you wonder where that time was spent considering the issues it had then, and even to the current day. It's not all bad though, considering at a base you can have some fun with this. However, the arcade version does still feel like the better version with its smooth gameplay, despite its chunky graphics of old. The updated presentation has its blemishes, but it's not the worst remake out there. It's also a cheap pickup regardless of platform, going for about $30 for complete copies, including special editions. The original is also a staple at most arcades, so that might be the best option pound for pound. House of the Dead Remake gets a 5.5 out of 10, and I would only recommend it to fans of light gun games who like to try any title they can find, or those looking to get a special edition for the cheaps, as this does come with a fair amount of stuff. While there are worse light gun games out there are also way better ones than this, and this should have been a slam dunk. The technical issues and lengthy load times do take away from the experience, unfortunately, and hopefully Megapixel will take what they learned here and make the House of the Dead 2 remake something truly special. Even more so, hopefully Sega will revisit more of their light gun game franchises, considering in the right studio's hands, these games could absolutely slap. And I thank you again if you made this far into the video. If you find these videos helpful, that's awesome. I'm glad to use it as a resource. Check back often. We'll have more reviews and commentaries come up in the near future. But until then, take it easy and stay safe out there. I'll see you on the next one.